Well, hey everyone, welcome into the Pressing On podcast. I'm your host, Richie Reeder, and I have the honor of leading our organization in serving hospitalized families. You're listening to episode 16, which is a special holiday themed episode featuring my wife and best friend, Regan Reeder. More on her in a moment. First, I want to remind you of our year end Night of Impact live stream on YouTube and Facebook Live that'll take place on Tuesday, December 3rd at 7:30 p.m. You don't want to miss this annual event where you can support a great cause from the comfort of your couch. Join us online as we kick off our year-end giving campaign and share program highlights from 2024 with Pressing On. It's going to be a great night, and so plan to join Regan and I online. Go to pressingon.org or our Facebook page for more information. Just search for Pressing On PGH on most social platforms. We appreciate your partnership and personal support of hospitalized families, especially here at year end. Well, our first ever two-time guest of the podcast here in episode 16 is Regan Reeder. She's the co-founder of Pressing On and currently a K-12 cyber special education facilitator. As a medical mama who's experienced her daughter's long road to recovery from liver transplant, Regan's passionate about connecting with transplant families, providing helpful resources, and encouraging them in the midst of their pain. In her spare time, she can be found reading Jan Karen's Mitford series, watching the Hallmark Channel, and enjoying time with me, her husband Richie, and our girls, Alivia and Myka. In this episode, Regan talks about the challenges associated with celebrating the holidays with a medically fragile child. She shares about the time that we found ourselves in the hospital on Christmas Eve with our daughter Myka Joy, how traveling with a child affected by chronic illness can be difficult during the holidays, and how family members can help out and accommodate various special needs during this festive time of year. This episode will definitely put you in the holiday spirit, so enjoy hearing from my favorite person, Regan Reeder. Well, welcome back into the Pressing On podcast, everyone. I have the treat to have the one, the only Regan Reeder, my wife and best friend, with me here in episode 16. Babe, thanks for joining the Pressing On podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We've got a very special holiday themed episode here with Regan Reeder, as this episode is airing the day before Thanksgiving, and many people will be listening to it throughout the holiday season here in 2024. Babe, I think our girls are really ready for the Christmas season to roll around. What are your thoughts on getting the
Hmm.
holiday season going? Does it start November 1st? Do you have to wait till after Thanksgiving? What do you think?
This may be the earliest they have ever pushed for Christmas. It may have been before Halloween this year. It definitely was. Olivia told me when there were 60 days left until Christmas. So she's putting the pressure on for sure.
Wow. Yeah. Well, Regan Reeder is the co-founder of Pressing On and currently a K through 12 cyber special education facilitator. I have known her for a very long time, and she's always been an advocate for the outsider and on the lookout for helpful, inclusive practices, especially those with special needs. And so she's a medical mama, and she's a wonderful wife and best friend and wonderful mother to our 13 and 9-year old. And we're talking today on the topic of celebrating the holidays with a medically fragile child. And so we'll talk about holiday adaptations,
Mhm.
family expectations, and tips for those affected by chronic illness, rare diagnoses, and special needs. And so, as a medical mama and special education teacher, I couldn't think of anybody better to talk about these topics over the holidays here on the podcast. And so, first, let's talk about some of your favorite holiday traditions. You grew up in the Midwest, whether it was with family at Thanksgiving or over the Christmas holiday, maybe New Year's. What were some of your fondest holiday memories or traditions growing up?
Yeah, this was fun to think about. There were so many great memories. Christmas has always been one of my very favorite times of the year for many obvious reasons. But when I think about some of my favorite memories, they involve family, lots of different family activities. I reflect on a lot of time with my cousins. There were nine cousins growing up. Two were quite a bit older, but the seven of us around my age and down, we had so much fun playing at grandma's house for Thanksgiving or Christmas. We never wanted to leave. We never wanted the day to end. So those are some of my favorite family memories. And then being at home on Christmas, running out, getting our stockings, opening gifts, playing all day long, having both my grandmas stop over at some point to show them everything we got. Those were some. And then to go along with that, making Christmas cookies with my grandma Doris. She loved to bake and shared her molasses cookies with me that I now make for our family every year. And then Christmas lights. Who doesn't love Christmas lights?
Yes.
Definitely still some of our favorite family traditions.
Absolutely. If you ever want to know what it was like to grow up in Wasion, Ohio, where Regan was born and raised, just go watch a Hallmark Christmas movie. And all of those feels that you get, whether you're listening or watching right now, you know what I'm talking about.
You do
It,
drive down Main Street and see a star, so
uh-huh.
yeah, yeah.
If you're listening in for the first time, Regan won't share all of our story as a family on this episode, but she does share our family's whole journey of perseverance in episode 1, entitled Enduring the
Mhm.
Long Road of Pediatric Liver Transplant. So, Regan, congrats on being our first ever repeat guest to the podcast, as this is your second time
Wow.
in season 1 and now in season 2. So, thanks for joining us once again.
Thank you. Thanks for
Um,
trusting to have me back.
Absolutely. We're going to have you on every season. This is great. One of our
Okay.
most valued guests. You just didn't know what you signed up for. So, we have a social media post that we've each kind of written a little piece of it, entitled The Holidays Can Be Hard. Just acknowledging that there is pain in families that have been in the hospital frequently and that are walking a traumatic journey with
Mhm,
illness and rare
mhm.
diagnoses in their children. And we've posted it several years in a row during the holiday season, during the month of December, and I'll read it in a moment. But for families affected by chronic illness, long term hospitalizations, and rare diseases, those that are medically fragile, why can the
Mm.
holidays be hard?
The holidays are extra hard because it brings to light how many unknowns there are. I think we think of the holidays with the word tradition. We think of things that are repeated year after year. And when you're dealing with a medically complex child, you're living in a daily state of unknowns. And I think that's just highlighted even more when you want so badly for it just to feel quote unquote normal at the holidays. You want those traditions to just be what they've always been. We want them to feel like they've always felt. And instead, you're met with a stark reminder of how many unknowns you're living with. Um, it just really highlights it, I think, when you're really craving stability and what you felt like was normal isn't your normal anymore. So I think it highlights that. And then the second thing is germs.
Hmm.
Germs are really hard. Um, there's a constant struggle when you have a medically complex child to protect them and yet to also keep living life and to be with your family and take a risk that it's life. There are germs, there are illnesses, um, but it's just so highlighted when you have a child who is medically fragile, um, that you're going to be around some more germs. And so to me, that all led to there's kind of some pretending that happens in families with medically complex kids around the holidays. I think some of that pretending can be kind of good because you're really trying for your kids or your other kids who aren't affected by illness to still have a good time and carry on traditions. But there's also the hard part of pretending when you're hurting inside and you're feeling like everything is upside down, but you're still trying so hard to push through for the sake of your other children or your family. So just so many complex emotions that surround um, all of life, but I think it's really highlighted at the holidays.
Yeah. And I think just the simple phrase, the holidays can be hard, is just an acknowledgement that
Yeah.
that things are not always what they seem. Like, you just use the word pretending. Not that, we don't want to
Hmm.
be real and raw and vulnerable, but at the same
Right.
time, too, there's so many families that we've talked to, that we've served with in the organization, that have walked the lonely and isolating roads of hospitalizations and transplant, that, it's really just an acknowledgement that, hey, this is a hard season. This is a
Yeah.
hard time. And,
Right.
we don't want to sugarcoat it, but at the same time, too, it's just difficult, and it's okay to
Yeah.
just let that be.
Right.
I'll read the social media posts that we've put out there before. The holidays can be hard. Some may
Hmm.
say it's the most wonderful time of the year in December, yet for many others, this season amplifies the grief, the pain, and heaviness of life. For many, the Christmas season doesn't bring about visions of sugar plums or warm feelings of walking in a winter wonderland. The combined chaos of sickness, loss, crises, misunderstandings, medical setbacks, broken relationships, family expectations, and overcrowded schedules and rooms can be overwhelming and hopelessly isolating. So let's listen and love this holiday season. Here's to the many stories to be shared, friends to be welcome, comfort to be offered, listening ears to be given, family to be reunited, hugs to be embraced, encouraging words to be spoken, and healing that will take place. I think for all of us, just to
Good.
simply acknowledge that the holidays can be hard is over
Yes.
half of the battle. Um,
Hmm.
you've shared our daughter's story many times in many different contexts, but can you
Hmm.
remember some specific times that Myka and our family was in the hospital around the holidays, and describe for us what that time felt like and how you were feeling as a medical mama?
Yeah. I think in one year she might have hit Valentine's Day, Memorial Day, Labor Day, and Christmas.
I think
I
you're
think
right.
there was one year
I
we
think you're
were
right.
awfully close to like four. Um, but specifically Christmas of 2017. So Micah had her liver transplant in January of 2017. She was inpatient for a solid 2 months and then bounced in and out of the hospital for another couple of months after that. um, we kind of felt like we had maybe finally hit some sort of stability in the
Sure.
fall of 2017, minus her broken wrist. We had managed to like somehow feel like we were maybe breathing. And
Hmm.
we ended up back in the hospital on December 23rd of 2017. She woke up super lethargic. We knew something was really off. My family was in town from Ohio. We were going to have our family Christmas that day
Yep.
and very quickly realized that was not what the day was going to look like. And we headed down to Children's Hospital pretty quickly. She was quite dehydrated and had definitely caught again some sort of bug that was not anything insane to the average person or average child, but with the amount of immunosuppression she was on, it just hit her much harder.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, we went into the hospital not knowing if we would, be home for Christmas. And then you have all the emotions of what that means for your other child and your own disappointment. I think, you struggle with feelings of discouragement, defeat, depression, um, in lots of different ways, but it is so much harder when you're thinking of being in the hospital on Christmas.
Hmm.
I will say, I think most teams are probably like this. They do everything they can to get you out of there, at least for the day of Christmas. And
Hmm.
so we did get home, I think, about dinner time Christmas Eve.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
it was thankfully a pretty short stay, but yeah, we've been there and it's just really hard.
Hey friends, I'm Regan Reeder, co-founder of Pressing On, and I love providing leadership to the organization as we uplift, resource, and coach hospitalized families, many of whom are on the journey of pediatric transplant. This season of the Pressing On podcast is sponsored by our friends at CODA, the Children's Organ Transplant Association. You can look them up online at coda.org. CODA helps children and young adults who need a life-saving transplant by providing fundraising assistance and family support. They're the trusted leader in supporting transplant families financially for a lifetime. CODA has helped raise more than $125 million for transplant-related expenses since 1986 and have seen approximately 2,400 CODA patients transplanted successfully. CODA is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so funds raised to help meet the needs of transplant patients are not considered income for families, and CODA's services are provided at no charge to transplant families. As the mom of a transplant recipient, I'd highly recommend their services because I've seen firsthand how CODA's compassionate care and financial guidance has helped our family since my daughter's transplant before, during, and after her transplant in 2017. For more information on how CODA might assist your family financially on the transplant journey, head to coda.org. That's COTA.org.
One thing that you started to touch on there that I'd like to hear a little bit more about and share with our listeners is I think it's the wise parent, the wise family member, the wise friend that acknowledges and remembers the other siblings that are affected by the
Mm-hmm.
patient in the hospital. That,
Mm-hmm.
these tough times around the holidays, like it doesn't just affect the patient that is hospitalized, but it
Sure.
affects their
Yeah.
siblings. Maybe say a little bit more about how you paid attention to our older daughter, Olivia's needs emotionally, physically, spiritually during the holiday season.
Oh, I think I'll always be second guessing if I, did enough or do enough, or what she's going to say about me in therapy some days. um, um, it's a constant struggle when you're between, you have multiple children and one is at home and one is in the hospital. And so you want Christmas to be such a magical time of year. At that point, I think Olivia would have been about 6 years old. I think she would have been in kindergarten. So,
Hmm.
um, such a magical time for a child, and you just want them to experience all the wonderful things. That's when you say it takes a village. That's when you're blessed to have family members step in and distract from what might be happening and be able to still do those fun things with your other child, but still making time to make sure you're checking in with them and asking how they're doing. Um, and we saw lots of different things from Olivia over the years. She was 3.5 when Myka was born, and there was definitely some times where it was like, I'm not the only kid anymore, and this kid is getting a lot of attention. And so, there's so many emotions that come with that. But I think just being present and acknowledging that they're going to be experiencing things that are hard too,
Yeah.
and just leaning into it. I think that's about all you can do.
Hmm. I appreciate you sharing that, babe. I mean, for many folks, the holidays involve family, and for many folks, it involves travel. I still remember the first time that we traveled after Micah's transplant in the summer of
Hmm.
2017, and how we went on a 4.5, 5 hour trip to the lake in southern Michigan. And I felt like we stopped every half hour, 45 minutes, because the combination
Oh
of
yeah.
travel, sickness, and the different
Oh
medications
yeah.
that Micah was on, and several different bouts of throw up
Hmm.
and pulling alongside the highway.
I think
I, f-
14. I think
I felt like
14.
I had driven across the USA just to
Yeah.
get 5 hours.
Uh-huh.
So it was one of
Ah.
those that I remember getting to the lake and thinking, why did we do this?
Never again.
Because it was so emotional and you felt so terrible for her, yet you didn't want her to
Oh,
have to live in a bubble per se, and wanted to try to do normal things. So we tried to go to the lake, and that first trip was kind of a disaster. Thankfully, it has gotten better since then. But talk a little bit about how traveling, not just with a child or with a
yeah.
child with special needs, but talk about traveling with a child with special medical
Mm.
needs complicates things, especially around the holidays.
Yeah. So much preparation. Just so much preparation. Um, it's taken me, she's almost 10. It's taken me 10 years to kind of streamline this process and fine tune my packing list that I do have on my computer and print out. Um, but just so much preparation. It's not just, hey, if we don't have enough diapers, we'll grab them at Walmart. It's so much preparation, um, and a lot of fear of what if something happens while we're gone. And there's, at least the safety net of living for us within 20 to 30 minutes of Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, where her whole medical team is. So there is so much fear when, especially the first few times you're traveling. So some things that came to mind for me is, I mean, I remember when we first traveled with her when she was 3 months old. Um, and we were like, can we ever leave Pittsburgh again?
Hmm.
And, they encouraged us, of course, to keep. do that and to keep living. But we have traveled with emergency phone numbers for the nearest children's hospitals everywhere we've gone since then.
Hmm.
At least for the first years before transplant, we also had like the medical genetics numbers in like Michigan, near where my parents were, out in Philly, when your mom lived out there.
Yep.
Like we had them on speed dial, with a letter that we would give them of Myka's condition, what IV fluids she would need administered. Um, I still have that in my bag. Um, so just a lot of preparation, and then the fear of what might happen.
Hmm.
But I mean, I've always kind of traveled with like a mini hospital. So
Yeah.
formula, feeding, pumps, meds, supplies, all those things. So I still travel with a large amount of supplies. Um, I still travel with things that most people would never think of traveling with.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like carrying an umbrella and hopefully it doesn't rain, but if it does and you
Yeah.
don't have it, then there's an issue. Maybe talk a little bit more about that letter because I think that that could be a good action
Hmm.
step for a lot of families that would not be too
Yeah.
terribly hard to get from your doctor, and it puts
Yeah.
you at a peace of mind because especially for us with rare metabolic diseases,
Yeah.
like our daughter and many of our friends have. It's not like a specific thing that a specialty doctor like understands right away with inborn errors of
Yeah.
metabolism and stuff like that. Maybe talk about that letter because that could be
Right.
a real easy next step for a family that's traveling.
Yeah, for sure. So I remember when we were traveling, toward my family for the first time in a small town in Ohio. I remember our genetics doctor saying, like, a typical ER doctor in a smaller hospital is probably not going to have a clue what methylmalonic acidemia is. They'll
Right.
probably have heard of an error of metabolism, but like the actual treatment of that, especially in an infant, is going to be really unknown. So they wrote a very specific letter of, a very brief description of what her disease is, and then an effective treatment plan to stabilize her. So, like what
Hmm.
IV fluids, what lipids she would need, which are like fats, what not to give her, and then their direct phone numbers, like their on call numbers. And so that did give us peace of mind that, like, I think we felt like, okay, if we could at least get to a hospital and get the right IV fluids started and they know what not to do, they could get immediately a hold of our team, get her transferred, but stable. And especially in the 2 years before transplant, we were always on the verge of that metabolic crisis. And so, yeah, that emergency letter is huge. I've had them tweak it over the years because then transplant became involved. And so, what does that look like now as a transplanted, child, in a local ER? So,
Hmm.
um, I think it's a great thing to ask. Even if your child has something rather simple, but there's a specific procedure that you're used to having done, have them write that down, because when you're in the complete panic of your child is sick and you're away from home, you're not going to remember all of that. So,
Yeah.
um,
It's
have that
definitely a
written down
beneficial
and
thing to have because in a sense, like during the holidays, not there's a lot of doctors that take time off, and
yeah.
it's a beneficial letter because then you're just communicating doctor to doctor as the
Mhm.
emotional parent that's rushing your child to get care in another
Right.
city that you're not familiar with. You're handing them the letter saying,
Yeah.
"This is what my doctor said to do for my child's rare condition in an emergency." You
Yeah,
you
and now that
started,
I'm thinking, oh,
sure,
sorry. Now that I'm thinking of it, technology has come a long way in 10 years since
yeah,
Myka was born. And so we do still have that letter. The letter was great. It still is. But Myka does now have a medical bracelet, and a lot of kids do, but it's called My ID. And it has a QR code on it. And that QR code would immediately link to anything I've put into that site. And I have her emergency letter uploaded into that site. I have all of her current medications and her diagnosis. And, you know, those types of things to me are important. There's a sticker on her car seat too. Like if you were in a car accident,
that's
um,
good.
that they would look for that and know. But also, if you didn't have that letter with you, but she had her bracelet on, they can, any ER doc or anyone knows to look for medical bracelets, and they could scan that. And again, I have our emergency phone numbers to our team in that as well. So that kind of is a technological advancement since 10 years ago.
Yeah, we'll link to that in the show notes. That's a great resource, the My ID health bracelet for sure. I appreciate you
Hmm.
mentioning that. Um,
Yeah.
you mentioned before a little bit about how you pack and prepare and the go bag that we take. And you mentioned a few things, but maybe just go over that again. Like, what are some helpful things to pack for your child as you're heading out for the holidays?
Yeah, I definitely overpack on the medical supplies because it's not something I can get, from Walmart or Target. So, for us with a child who's a metabolic patient and has a G tube and is a transplant patient, that means her feeding pump in the event that she's not feeding tube fed dependent anymore, but in the case of illness, she can be. We can use that to keep her calorie intake and fluids up. So I still take her feeding pump. I take feeding bags, all of the syringes and tubing that goes with that. I take an extra G tube because the G tube can pop out. I remember when they told us that, and
Yep.
my mind was blown. Like, and then what? Surgery? And they were like, no, you'll pop it back in. And I was like, yeah, I don't think so. And then it's like,
And they
no,
were right.
we just pop it back in. We change it ourselves every 3 months. But I take an extra G tube with us. I take a blood pressure cuff. I take a pulse ox. I take a glucose monitor, a thermometer. Syringes, formula, and then lots of medication. Thankfully, less as the years have gone on, but meds. And you know what? I take a lot of our vomit bags. Thankfully, we have needed them less over the years.
Yep.
But we used to like raid the ER when we were there. Like, I'd be like, take the whole sleeve, take all of the vomit bags. And
She's
we would
not
like
lying.
take the whole thing. But I still travel with a lot of those. Zofran for when she gets car sick, because we know that just happened still a month ago. So, I think I overpack, but then in the moments when some things have happened, we were in Orlando and almost ended up at their
Hmm.
children's hospital one time. And we like managed to not, because we had all of these emergency sick day supplies with us. So if
Hmm.
we can manage it, not to ever put her at risk, but if we can manage it, it's just so much scarier when you're not home.
Yeah, absolutely. I
But yeah,
appreciate
it's
you
a lot.
mentioning that.
Hmm.
And not to overwhelm families either, in the sense that many of these things, once you pack them in a go bag, you don't have to pack and repack them every
Right.
single time you head out the door. Many of these things you can kind of keep packed and hopefully you don't use them
Hmm.
and you can use them for the next trip. Um,
Yeah.
One of the things that I thought of while you were talking is I want to point out a resource on our website that if you go to pressingon.org under the resources tab, you'll see hospital checklists. Now, this is a little bit different than packing for the holidays, but there's several different checklists on there that whether you're a transplant patient or you're rushing to the ER or you're staying at the Ronald McDonald House in your city, there's specific packing lists there that you can kind of get a feel, and several duplicate items of what Regan just mentioned that we personally keep packed and that we're going to travel with over the holidays. You can get a real nice feel for several of the things that we recommend families travel with and pack for their
Yeah.
medically fragile child with those
Hmm.
hospital checklists. And so pressingon.org, resources tab, hospital checklists.
Hey everyone, I'm Alivia Reeder, and I love helping my parents serve hospitalized families through our Pressing On programs. Here at Pressing On, we're committed to meeting tangible needs, and we have various programs that help resource hospitalized families physically, emotionally, and spiritually, including our Hospital Care Package program, Transplant Backpack program, Gas Card program, Crisis Coaching program, and Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh program. So if you or a family you know is affected by a long-term hospitalization or is on the journey of pediatric transplant, we'd love to come alongside you with free resources during this time. Let me encourage you to visit our website at pressingon.org to sign up for our free resources or make a referral to one of our programs. Visit pressingon.org today. Thanks so much.
So transitioning a little bit to dietary restrictions. The holidays
Hmm.
involve lots of good meals and treats, but not every child, depending on what their condition is, can enjoy them the
Hmm.
same. From conditions like diabetes that limit sugar to metabolic
Hmm.
diseases that limit protein. What advice do you have for parents and caregivers and relatives on how to enjoy holiday treats while also following medical protocols that each healthcare condition might have?
Yeah, I have three main takeaways for this one.
Nice.
One, always defer to the caregiver. Always defer to the caregiver. Don't offer it to the child first and then say, "Is that okay, mom? Can she have that?" You've already dangled the carrot in front of her nose, and if everyone else is having it, she's going to want to have it too. It's better to ask ahead of time, um, or even just, kind of discreetly, like, "Hey, I'm not sure about this." That's okay. You don't need to know, how many carbs are in something or how much protein is in something. But just always defer to the parent or the caregiver.
Hmm.
Um, Two, I wrote, don't bring any more attention to it than is absolutely necessary.
That's good.
Um, I think just this is our normal. This is Micah's normal. Um, this is our reality. It is what it is. Don't bring more attention to it than you have to. We deal with this every day, every meal, every snack. Um, so, bringing more attention to it just singles the child out more, and makes it more stressful for the parent. So, just kind of like defer to the parent and don't bring more attention to it than is
Right.
necessary. And then third, I wrote, don't show sympathy. Um, you don't need to say, "I'm so sorry you can't have this. I know it's so terrible you can't have this." A kid like Micah who can't have a ton of protein, like she's used to that. It's not part of her everyday. A child who's diabetic, like, "I'm so sorry you can't have all of this cake right now." Like that, it
That's
just
just
doesn't
their
help. It's
reality.
not, yeah, it is their reality. And it's okay to feel sad about it. Like we've all feel sad about that all the time. But I'm not sure that the child feels sad about it that much because it is their reality. Um, but when you draw attention to it and say how sad it is, then of course they're kids. They're gonna be like, "Oh, attention," and
Hmm.
yeah, this is terrible. And then they're gonna, bring more attention to it. So those are my three. Defer to the parents. Don't bring more attention to it than you have to, and don't show sympathy. Just accept it and make the best of it and have a good time.
That is excellent. And I mean, honestly, with the holidays, there is a lot of other wonderful things to focus on than
Yeah,
what you put in your mouth. It's
right.
definitely a fun part of the holidays for sure, eating lots of good food, but there's so many other things to redirect attention
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, redirect it to the next fun thing, like, "Hey, after we do this, we're going to do this really fun craft, or
Hmm.
we're going to go look at Christmas lights," and get them excited about the next thing that they can fully partake in.
Yeah, that's good. Maybe put on your educator hat for a second here. When we think of special needs, I mean, that can go in lots of different directions. Um,
Mhm.
and so, maybe somebody's listening who has a relative with special needs. How can an extended family member listen, learn, help their family members in a helpful way this holiday season?
Mhm. I would say listen. Um, you know, just be present. Um, it You might be uncomfortable, and that's okay. Um, it's so hard for us more and more, I think, as the years go by, and in the age in which we live in, instant gratification and wanting to be comfortable, to really struggle with discomfort. And so,
Hmm.
being around someone who might have some behaviors that you're not used to seeing, or um, some medical needs that make you uncomfortable, just be present with that family. Listen to them. I think there are so many kids with special needs who are just waiting to be heard, and
Mm.
You might have to hear it with a different set of ears, or you might have to just be a little bit slowed down, but they want to be heard. And so just be present, put aside your own wishes and default to the family or the child in those situations, and just embrace the discomfort, because I think in the end it's such a blessing. There's so much we can learn from people who aren't just like us in every way, medically, whether that's special needs, um, just from one another. And we've lost that so much as a nation, as a, as just as people. Like, we can still love one another and show kindness, even when we're dealing with really different things.
That's so good. I appreciate you sharing that. I think, when you're surrounded by well-meaning people, but they don't know what to do, one of the
Yeah.
things that we've always shared with family, friends, caregivers, people that we serve in the organization is just simply jump in and do something that you can do. You don't have to say
Mm-hmm.
the right thing, but the
Mm-hmm.
person is going to remember that you were there and that you were helpful more than anything that
Yeah.
you would say. And a lot of people feel
Right.
uncomfortable in a situation with medical needs or special needs because it makes them feel uncomfortable and they don't know what to say. And that's okay. I
It's
would just
okay.
reaffirm to listeners that you don't need to know what to say. It's your presence that
Yeah.
counts more than anything.
Right.
And I can
I don't
remember, like,
remember anything people have
right.
said to me, really. I mean, I remember who showed up. I remember
Hmm.
who was there, and things like that. But yeah, just be.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think like some of the best things that people did for us was they just jumped in and did what they could do. I think one of the worst
Yeah.
things that you can say to somebody is, well, hey, let me know what you need.
Mhm.
Because the reality
Mhm.
is many times you don't know what you need in the midst of a
Yeah.
crisis
No
or with a
idea.
child with complex medical needs. And so it
Yeah.
was the people that jumped in and filled our gas tank or filled our fridge or changed a headlight or mowed the lawn
Shoveled
in the
our driveway. Yeah.
summertime or shoveled our
Mm.
driveway in the wintertime, like right now.
Yeah.
There's lots of
Mhm.
things that you can do to jump in and help a family with medical needs in a way that they don't need to know exactly what it is, that you can just jump
Yeah.
in and help them
Right.
out.
Mhm.
Can you maybe
For
give an
sure.
example or two of how a family member or friend has helped you, has helped our family well, and been considerate with Micah's care around the holidays?
I think we've been very blessed with both sides of our family as being super supportive
For
and
sure.
very understanding. I know families that I have talked to that are that's not the case. It's
Yeah.
like, we're not worried about germs. It's fine. Everything's fine. And then that family is completely excluded, and it makes the holidays even harder. We've been so blessed with everyone being overly cautious, very sensitive. When we've asked people to take their shoes off and wash their hands when they walk in the door, they've been so willing to do that. Um, Willing to jump in and help when we have been in the hospital in rough times and make things better for Alivia. Um, yeah, I
Hmm.
can't think of any one specific thing other than as a
Yeah.
whole, we're super blessed with our family being so supportive, for sure.
Yeah. And I think like if you're listening to the podcast and you're a friend or an extended family member of
Hmm.
somebody that has some medical needs, just a simple text or just a simple question of like, hey, what would make your family feel most comfortable this holiday season? That question was
Yeah,
not just a helpful and kind question during COVID, but it's an
yeah.
ongoing, helpful, kind
Hmm.
question to family members that might be immunosuppressed during the winter time and during the flu season that should be asked every year. That's
Yeah.
probably a good reminder for all of us.
Well, since you mentioned COVID, I thought of that a little while ago. I thought, we were living the COVID lifestyle since the day Micah was born.
Yep.
Maybe not wiping down groceries, but we were like doing all of the things of
We had
taking
the
our
hand
shoes off as soon as
sanitizer bottle right when you walked in the house in 2017.
the
Yeah, I
big
mean,
Sam's Club size
oh
one.
yeah.
Um, and being super cautious with germs. And so it is interesting now, post a pandemic, everyone has experience with what it is, what it does feel like to be very fearful of of germs and of unknowns that, hopefully that has led to people having a little bit more empathy and understanding toward, families that have medically complex kids. So if not, some advice would be like, put yourself back in those shoes of those
Sure.
early months of 2020. And, if you had been forced to engage in holiday activity in that exact moment, what would have been helpful to you or what might have, helped. So maybe that helps give some perspective.
That's good. Well, before we ask for some closing advice for families with medical needs and traveling around the holidays, we want to get into our Christmas themed rapid fire round where we ask some fun questions that help our listeners get to know you just as a human being. And so, are you ready for the Christmas themed rapid fire round, Regan?
All right, let's do it.
All right. Favorite Christmas gift that you've ever received as a child?
My McDonald's playset. Classic.
Oh, yeah.
Classic. It would have been the late 80s. The McDonald's drive-through, like foldable drive-through window kitchen that my parents still have at their house and our kids love to play with. That had to have been my favorite Christmas gift ever.
And I believe that we
It
have
lives
video
on.
of you playing with it as a child, and it is now a multi-generational gift. So
Yeah, I think of that most weeks. At least I have my career at McDonald's to fall back on. So
there you go. Yeah.
mhm.
Favorite item that you love to find in your Christmas stocking as an adult?
As an adult, Ghirardelli peppermint bark.
Yes. Awesome. I've got different reasons for asking these
Ghirardelli.
questions. I hear you.
Ghirardelli.
I hear you. I'll help Santa with that this year.
Santa brought a different kind last year.
Oh, okay. We'll have to clarify that with Santa. All right. So I know that you are a huge Hallmark movie fan, but you're an even bigger Christmas movie fan. What's your favorite Christmas movie? Like, it doesn't feel like the holidays unless you've seen it type of Christmas movie.
Yeah, White Christmas, no questions asked. White Christmas. I have to watch it while I'm wrapping some gifts or it's just not Christmas.
Bing Crosby classic. Love it.
I may have just bought a White Christmas sweatshirt. I don't know.
Oh, nice. What do you hope Santa brings you this year?
Oh, boy.
Again, dual purpose questions.
Oh, well, if Santa's asking, a new house. So there you go, Santa.
Okay.
Aside from that, I really have a lot of things on my list that are very exciting at this point in my life. So
No
I don't know.
worries.
Surprises.
You just have everything that you could possibly want.
I could. I mean,
So
do.
here's
What more
here's
could I
one of
want?
here's one of the questions that we've been asking every guest in season 2 of the podcast. This is a more serious question, but I find it really telling because everyone has something different, but also similar to say. And here's the question: what is your definition of perseverance?
Well, I think my definition of perseverance is kind of continuously changing and growing. I think years ago I would have said like pressing on no matter how hard it is, hence pressing on, like just pressing through, getting through it. Now I think it's more leaning in to the difficult times, learning from them, growing from them, and coming out on the other side, sometimes just barely having survived something, and yet hopefully God has used whatever trial it is to shape my character, ultimately to be more like Him and to, be more like Him to people around me.
That's good. You hit on a key theme there that I explained to lots of folks, in that, yes, the name of the organization is Pressing On, but the key to pressing on is actually pressing in.
Mm-hmm.
And the more questions that we ask, the more present that we are in our circumstances, the more that we grow.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you sharing that. That's a very meaningful perspective. Here in closing, what specific advice would you give to parents with a child with special medical needs that are looking to travel for the holidays? You've mentioned lots of things, but if you could kind of summarize it and sum it up, what advice would you give to parents that are traveling here for the holidays?
I think if it's at all possible, do it. The
Mm,
preparation is stressful, but it's always been worth it. Making memories as a family, making memories with, all of your kids, but, making memories with your kid with special needs to me, is always an experience of we're doing something I didn't know if we'd ever be able to do. And we made it here. And so I think it's worth it. I think ask for help. Don't don't be afraid to be a little bit assertive with
mm.
wherever you're going or whoever you're going to be with to say this is what we're going to need to make this work. Um, but I'd say if you can do it, do it. It's usually worth it. The memories are worth it later.
Awesome. Well, I am a better man because I get to spend every day with you. And so thank you for sharing this wisdom with our podcast listeners as well. I love it when we have these conversations as a couple, and any way that our organization can continue to share your insights. I think that we are better for it. And so if you're listening
Thank
to this
you.
podcast right now, from our family to yours, from the Reeder family, Richie, Regan, Alivia, and Myka, we wish your family a wonderful holiday season, happy Thanksgiving, a Merry Christmas, a wonderful New
Mhm.
Year. Wishing for you peace and unity in your family, lots of joy, and focusing on the things that really matter, and that you'd be present with your family, and that God's peace would rule and reign in your life, and that would be a wonderful holiday season. So, Regan, thanks for joining us on this holiday themed episode, and we'll catch you
You're
guys in the
welcome.
new year. Take care. Hey, thanks so much for listening to the Pressing On podcast. If you found this episode inspiring and helpful in your journey of perseverance, we appreciate you sharing it with others. A great way to support our work of serving hospitalized families is sharing the podcast with family and friends, posting about it on social media, or leaving us a rating and review. Don't forget to visit our website at pressingon.org for our free programs and resources for hospitalized families. Follow along the Pressing On journey on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Pressing On PGH. As we all press on through healthcare challenges, we need to stick together. Until next time, know that you are not alone. You are seen, valued, and loved. Keep pressing on.